Hello everybody, this is your July 2nd, 2019 Pacific Basin Hurricane Outlook and discussion and updates on Hurricane Barbara, a potential area of low pressure that may form off the Mexican coast this week and become the Pacific Basin's third tropical cyclone. So updates on the potential area of low pressure during the next 48 hours, it has a 0% chance of forming. Formation chance during the next 5 days is a high 70% chance. And according to the National Hurricane Center, they stated it as an area of low pressure is forecast to develop later this week several hundred miles southwest of the southern coast of Mexico. Environmental conditions are expected to be favorable for the system to become a tropical depression over the weekend while it moves westward to west-northwestward at about 15 miles per hour. During the last advisory that the National Hurricane Center sent out about Barbara, they stated it as conventional satellite imagery and microwave data reveal that the structure of Barbara has improved significantly. The hurricane has developed an arc surrounded by a ring of very deep convection, and both features have been present during the past several hours. This improvement in structure has been accompanied by substantial intensification, and based on both objective and subjective numbers of 6.0 on the Dvorak scale, the initial intensity has been adjusted upward to 150 knots. During that current intensity and the future intensity of Barbara, right then and there at 5 a.m., at an intensity of 130 mile per hour winds, 12 hours from then, it was forecast to have an intensity of 150 miles per hour winds, 24 hours from then, 145 mile per hour winds, 36 hours from then, 130 mile per hour winds, 48 hours from then, 150 mile per hour winds, 72 hours from then, 85 mile per hour winds, 96 hours from then, 60 mile per hour winds, 120 hours from then 40 mile per hour winds. Barbara is expected to weaken during the next 3 days thanks to much cooler waters and significantly higher wind shear, which will probably rapidly weaken the hurricane and the cause of a possible hurricane replacement cycle in the center of the eye wall, which will probably weaken it significantly before it reaches Hawaii, which is a very good thing, so it's definitely a much less of a threat to Hawaii than was previously forecasted. That's definitely a good thing for Hawaii, but it still could bring dangerous rip currents, gusty winds, and heavy rainfall, though probably to a minimal amount. It's still something to watch, and we have to remember that this is hurricane season, and you have to be prepared, and because it only takes one to make for a completely devastating hurricane season. Thanks to Tropical Tidbits, the last information and update on Hurricane Barbara, thanks to Levi Cowan, it had maximum winds of 120 knots to 140 mile per hour winds, gusts to 145 knots, and a minimal central pressure of 945 millibars. The satellite presentation of Barbara is very, very impressive with a very well-defined eye and a very impressive outflow, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's at or probably near Category 5 intensity at this time. The National Hurricane Center doesn't currently have it reaching Category 5 intensity, but different websites like AccuWeather have it getting the Category 5 intensity, so it's always something to watch and could become definitely Category 5 even for a short amount of time. To the visual loop of Barbara hasn't definitely improved significantly in its satellite presentation even over the last couple hours, thanks to explosive intensification. Yesterday it was just a Category 1 storm. Now it's a Category 4 hurricane. It's definitely improved remarkably in intensification and presentation, so I wouldn't be surprised if it did get the Category 5 intensity even for a short amount of time, but it's definitely a very, very, very well-defined eye and very impressive outflow. The models of Hurricane Barbara, thanks to shipping models and model intensity guidance, don't currently have it reaching Category 5 intensity, but do have it gaining strength slightly to maybe a stronger Category 4 hurricane, maybe around 150 to 145 knots. But it still has it definitely getting stronger, but maybe not to a really very powerful hurricane. But you have to remember, Hurricane Alvin last week was not forecasted to become a Category 1 hurricane by these models, but it did become a Category 1 hurricane for just a couple hours, but that means Hurricane Barbara could still behave the same way and get the Category 5 intensity, even if it's for, a pretty short amount of time. SET's anomalies in the Eastern Pacific Basin and Central Pacific Basins are running above average in most areas in, the main basin where most of the activity occurs is definitely running above average, but we are seeing, a spotty patch of cold air and cold waters off the by the equator, but that's some could be a sign of maybe a weakening El Nino, even though it's a 66% chance of the El Nino continuing through June through August, a 50 to 55% chance of it continuing through the entire winter. But the spotty and spontaneous patches of cold water could definitely be a sign that it's beginning to weaken. But overall, the Eastern Pacific is running above average in most, if not all, ways. Now the GFS model taking it to like Hurricane Barbara and now Cosme. You can see Hurricane Barbara getting out and slowly weakening due to increasing wind shear and cooling waters, maybe some dry air and eye-level replacement cycle. But you can see it gradually weakening going to the west, and you can possibly see tropical cyclone Cosme, which may become a minimal to moderate tropical storm according to this GFS model one. Don't expect to become a hurricane, but possibly a 50 to 65 mile per hour winds. I would expect this, but besides that, we really don't see possibly another really tropical cyclone. Possibly, I mean, we see something spinning up right here, but it lasts pretty short and pretty spontaneous. But we really don't see any of these tropical disturbances forming and hurricanes or tropical cyclones. But they're coming out off the Atlantic, pretty robust waves. So I mean, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we got a Dahlia in the next storm. Name forgot what it was, but I won't be surprised if it just increased and we did pump out maybe like five to six storms by the end of July, like depending on like how much this pattern continues in the Eastern Pacific. Because I mean, we had Alvin and Bob, and short amount of periods of time, 2 days apart, two hurricanes 2 days apart. Even though we had like it was one of the latest Eastern Pacific starting dates ever, but they're now becoming really powerful, and it's something to watch out for. So now I'm gonna go to 16 west wavelength and looking at different cloud tops and how like different storms out in the Pacific. We really don't see much of organized activity besides Barbara at this point, which you can see in the southern right hand tip of the imagery. But we still you still see some spotty storms. But besides Barbara, there really isn't any organized disturbances out in the Eastern Pacific at this point. Besides the potential area of low pressure that may form and come Cosme, however you pronounce it. That could become the next storm. But I mean, it is hurricane season. You have to be prepared. It only takes one. I mean, you had Hurricane Andrew in 1992. 1992 only had about 6 named storms, and Hurricane Andrew did an explosive impact the homestead in southern Florida. But that's just a really great example of it. It only takes one. Now going to the NWS National Hurricane Center sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific. You see most of the Eastern Pacific is running above or at 80 degrees. You can see this, particularly separating line, which goes from around here. And I mean, like, over like where you would expect like the intense and like warm waters, that's where it's pretty much running at. And you get higher latitudes or lower latitudes, it gets cooler. But I mean, it's running pretty much above average, and we may see more and more storms coming out of this East Pacific because we're forecast to have around 20 to 22 named storms in the Pacific, around 8 to 12 hurricanes, and 4 to 6 major hurricanes. So we could see multiple hurricanes and major hurricanes and tropical cyclones just in the Pacific overall. And last year in 2018, we had it was the most AC ever recorded accumulated cyclone energy, which is the measure of how strong and how long a storm lasts. It was the highest ever in the Pacific, Eastern Pacific, and Central Pacific combined last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we just got more and more. So it's definitely running above average, and it's hurricane season. We have to be prepared. So thank you for listening. This is July 2nd hurricane outlook and discussion for the Pacific Basin and updates on Hurricane Barbara and possibly potential tropical storm, Cosme.